The stars stretched endlessly across the dark sky, glittering like scattered diamonds over the void of space. Leora, the alien princess of the Elysians, stood alone on the cold metal deck of her flagship. Her eyes, a shade of violet deeper than the galaxy itself, scanned the horizon, but her mind was elsewhere. She had seen countless beings from distant worlds, warriors, scientists, explorers. But none had made her heart beat with curiosity. None had made her pause in thought. The way he did. His name was Kale, a human, fragile, ordinary, and yet extraordinary in a way she could not yet define. He had arrived aboard a small, unassuming ship from a planet called Earth. Most aliens laughed at the idea that humans could travel the stars, thinking them weak, unprepared, and primitive. But Kale had walked through the corridors of the Elysians' capital without fear. His gaze was steady, his posture calm, his every action deliberate. He carried no weapons of power, no armor forged from alien metals, and yet there was something magnetic about him. Something that made other beings, Leora included, stop and look. The Elysians had invited humans as part of a gesture of diplomacy, a small token to show that their civilization welcomed outsiders. But Kale had captured far more attention than anyone had anticipated. While other ambassadors struggled to understand alien protocols, Kale observed quietly, learned quickly, and smiled when it felt natural. That smile, gentle, honest, human, tugged at something inside Leora that she had never felt before. She moved closer to the railing, letting the cold wind brush her face. The void below was silent and endless, yet she could not stop thinking about him. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile. They were supposed to be insignificant. And yet here he was, standing calmly in the middle of a galaxy that treated him like dust. Why him? She whispered to herself. Her voice was barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. Among thousands of species, countless beings stronger, smarter, faster than humans, why had her attention fallen on this one fragile creature? Kale was walking toward the observation deck, unaware of her gaze. He paused for a moment as if sensing her eyes and tilted his head. A small, simple gesture, but it made her heart flutter unexpectedly. In that moment she realized humans were unpredictable. They were small, yes, but inside them lay a spark, a light that could not be measured by strength, intellect, or technology. The Elysians around them barely noticed the human. They moved with practiced efficiency, their voices carrying authority, their expressions unreadable. Yet even they could not ignore the subtle shift that Kale's presence brought. It was not power, it was not weaponry. It was something different. A quiet confidence, an unshakable calm, a hint of courage hidden beneath ordinary appearance. Leora stepped back, her hands gripping the railing. Her mind raced. She had spent her life preparing for politics, war, and duty. She had seen battles that tore stars apart and decisions that cost entire worlds. And yet a simple human, one she barely knew, was making her question everything. As Kale reached the deck, he looked out at the stars, his eyes reflecting the vastness of space. For a moment, the silence between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken questions and possibilities. Leora realized that in him, she saw something the Elysians had long forgotten. Hope. Not the kind of hope that came from technology or armies, but the quiet, stubborn, unstoppable hope that came from the heart of a human being who refused to yield. Even in the face of an impossible galaxy, she turned away, her pulse quickening, but the thought remained. This human, fragile, ordinary, and yet somehow extraordinary, would change everything. And she knew deep inside that she would follow him no matter where the stars took him. Days passed aboard the Elysians' flagship, and Leora found herself watching Kale more than she wanted to admit. He moved among the alien crew with a quiet ease that surprised her. He asked questions, listened carefully, and learned quickly, not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. It was a quality rare in the galaxy, where pride and power often overshadowed curiosity. The crew whispered about him. He's human, they said. Fragile, weak, barely trained for space travel. How can he survive here? But Kale ignored their doubts. He smiled when he spoke to Leora, his eyes warm and honest, as if the universe itself were simple and beautiful, and he simply wanted to know it. Leora felt a pull toward him she could not explain. She had always been composed, careful with her emotions, the perfect image of an alien princess, disciplined, intelligent, untouchable. Yet when she was near Kale, her thoughts scattered. A simple joke from him made her laugh in ways she did not expect. A gesture of kindness made her heart ache. And every time he looked at her with that human curiosity, she felt seen in a way no one else had ever seen her. Cale noticed her glances but never made her feel awkward. Instead, he smiled gently as if saying, "I see you and it's okay." She began to realize that humans were not just fragile creatures of flesh and bone. They carried within them a strength that could not be measured. It was patience, empathy, courage, and a stubborn spark that refused to be ignored. One evening, as the stars shone bright above the flagship, Cale approached her quietly. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "if the galaxy is bigger than we can understand or if it's exactly what we make of it?" Leora turned to him, startled. Most beings asked questions of strategy, of politics, of power, but this human spoke of wonder, of possibility. I don't know," she admitted. "I have spent my life learning to control everything. The galaxy, the people, the outcomes. I forgot what it feels like to wonder." Cale smiled, a small, understanding smile. "Then maybe it's time to remember." She felt warmth flood through her chest, a sensation she had long forgotten. The way he spoke, so simple and gentle, made the vastness of the galaxy feel less frightening. In Cale's presence, the world seemed softer, brighter, alive. Leora realized that she was beginning to trust him, not because he had proven himself in battle, or through intelligence or through wealth, but because he was human, and humans were unpredictable, honest, and fearless in ways the Elysians could not understand. Yet there was tension too. The Elysians looked at Cale with skepticism, and whispers followed them everywhere. "He's too small," they said. "He will never survive the trials ahead." But Leora ignored their words. She knew something they did not. She could see the spark within him, a spark that could ignite the impossible. One night, Leora found herself standing beside him at the observation deck. The stars reflected in his eyes, and for a moment words failed her. I don't know why I feel this," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to be near you." Cale looked at her, his gaze steady. "I'm glad," he said simply. "I feel the same. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. You and we see each other for who we are. That's what counts." For the first time, Leora felt safe, not from enemies, not from battles, but from the galaxy itself. The human beside her was not just an explorer. He was a companion, a friend, someone who made her heart beat in ways she could not control. And in that moment, she knew that whatever came next, she would face it with him. Humans were underestimated across the stars. They were small, fragile, and often ignored. But Cale carried something no alien could mimic: a heart that refused to bow, a courage that refused to break, and a love that refused to hide. Leora could only watch him, amazed as the bond between them quietly grew. In the vast, cold emptiness of space, a small human had begun to warm her heart in ways she had never imagined, and she knew that soon the universe would have to pay attention to the fire that burned within him. The calm of the Elysians' capital was shattered one morning by an urgent alarm. Red lights flashed across the corridors, and the hum of the flagship's engines was drowned out by the distant roar of warning sirens. Leora's heart raced. She had trained for crises like this, but this time, her fear was different. It wasn't just strategy or politics. It was worry for the human she had begun to care for deeply. Cale was already at her side, his expression calm despite the chaos around them. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice steady but alert. "The Korath," one officer said, fear in his eyes. "A rogue fleet. They've declared war on us. Their ships are approaching fast, and their weapons are devastating." Leora's violet eyes widened. The Korath were ruthless, known across the galaxy for destroying entire systems without mercy. The Elysians had fought many battles before, but this fleet was unlike any they had faced. Their ships were advanced, their numbers overwhelming, and their leader was said to be a master of war beyond comprehension. She turned to Cale, her chest tightening. "This is dangerous." "You shouldn't be here. You're human," Kyle smiled faintly. "Then let me help. I'm not just human. I'm here with you." Leora wanted to argue, to tell him to stay safe, but deep inside she knew he wouldn't listen. He had a way of standing firm, of looking at danger without fear, that made even the strongest Elysians pause. His courage was quiet, different from theirs, and it made her heart ache with pride and worry at the same time. The fleet of Korath ships appeared on the sensors. Dark silhouettes cutting through the starry sky. Leora's stomach tightened. Her soldiers prepared their weapons, and the flagship's energy shields flared to life, shimmering like a protective dome around the capital. But even the strongest Elysians felt the weight of fear pressing down on them. Kyle placed a hand gently on Leora's arm. "We can do this," he said softly. "Not with strength alone, but with heart. Sometimes courage matters more than power." Leora stared at him. His words were simple, almost naive, but there was a conviction in them that struck deep. The Elysians had relied on technology, strategy, and force for generations, but Kale's calm bravery reminded her of something she had forgotten. That hope, faith, and courage could sometimes move the universe more than weapons ever could. The first wave of Korath ships fired, their energy beams slicing through space. Explosions rocked the flagship and alarms screamed louder. Leora barked orders, commanding her fleet with precision, but inside, her fear gnawed at her. Kyle stepped forward, unarmed, toward the center of the command room. "I have a way," he said simply, pulling a small device from his pack. It was nothing like the Elysians' weapons, simple, human-made, delicate-looking. The council laughed. "A human? With a toy? You think he can save us?" Leora's chest tightened. She ignored their laughter and looked at Kale, seeing only determination in his eyes. She believed in him even when no one else did. He took a deep breath and she realized something terrifying and wonderful at the same time. This human was about to challenge everything they knew. Kyle looked at her, his hand brushing hers. "Trust me," he whispered. "We can do this. Together." She nodded, fear and hope colliding inside her. She could only watch, unable to predict what would happen, knowing that the human beside her might change everything, or be lost forever. In that moment, Leora understood something profound. Humans were unpredictable, fragile and yet unstoppable in ways the galaxy could never measure. And Kyle, standing quietly amidst the chaos, was about to prove it. The Korath fleet struck like a storm across the stars, black ships cutting through space with deadly precision. Explosions erupted along the Elysian shields, sending tremors through the flagship. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the hum of engines warped under the strain. Leora's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the chaos unfold. The Elysians fought with skill and precision. Their weapons were sharp, their strategies practiced, but the Korath were relentless. One by one, ships were destroyed, torn apart by energy beams and plasma storms. Leora barked orders, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing inside her. But even she, the princess trained in war and diplomacy, could feel the weight of despair pressing down. Kyle stood beside her, calm as ever, watching the battlefield unfold on the viewing screens. "We can't fight them like this," he said quietly. "It's too many, too strong. There has to be another way." Leora turned to him, frustration and fear mixing in her eyes. "Another way? This is war. How can anyone stop them?" Kale reached into his pack and pulled out a small device no larger than a human hand. It glowed faintly, pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. The council members gasped. "A human? With a device? Do you think you can save us with that?" Kale didn't answer. He simply stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the fleet. Leora felt her chest tighten. She wanted to shout at him to stop, to retreat, to be safe. But something in her knew he had already made his choice. This human, so fragile, so ordinary, was about to confront an entire fleet, and somehow she believed he could succeed. The first Korath ships unleashed their fire again, beams of energy slicing through the void. But Kale activated the device. A brilliant light erupted, filling the room with a radiance that made Leora blink. The device hummed like a living thing, responding to him, and the Korath ships slowed as if some invisible force had wrapped around them. Leora's heart raced. She had never seen anything like this. Energy danced across the viewport, rippling outward in waves, and the Korath fleet faltered. They had expected weakness. They had expected fear. They had never expected this. The council shouted, their voices a mix of disbelief and fear. "It's impossible. No human could." Leora didn't listen. She watched Kale, his eyes glowing with a fierce determination, not of anger, but of pure courage. His small hands guided the device as though conducting a symphony of light and energy. Ships halted in mid-space, their weapons frozen, engines failing. For a moment, silence blanketed the battlefield. Then the Korath ships began to break apart one by one, disintegrating under the force Kale had unleashed. Leora's violet eyes filled with tears. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. He turned to her, exhausted but steady, and their eyes met. There was no arrogance, no pride, only determination, love, and an unwavering belief that they could face the impossible together. The Elysians, the Council, even the most skeptical soldiers, stared in awe. This human, fragile and small, had changed the course of the battle. He had shown them something they had never understood, that power was not just strength, weapons, or strategy. True power came from courage, from heart, from the will to rise even when all hope seemed lost. Leora felt something shift inside her. She had seen warriors, leaders, and conquerors, but Kale's bravery touched something deeper. She realized that the galaxy's greatest mistake had been underestimating humans. They were fragile, yes, but their hearts could shine brighter than the strongest weapon. And Kale had just proven it. As the light from the device faded, the Korath fleet began a retreat, broken and stunned. The flagship rocked gently, the alarms finally quieting. Leora exhaled, her hand trembling as it found Kale's. You saved us," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Kale smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief in his eyes. "We saved each other," he said softly. For the first time, Leora truly understood the fire humans carried within them. And she knew deep in her heart that this was only the beginning. The Korath fleet was in disarray, their ships scattered like frightened insects across the star-strewn void. Yet the battle was far from over. The Elysians, exhausted but vigilant, tried to push their advantage, but Leora knew the rogue fleet could strike again at any moment. The air on the flagship was thick with tension, the hum of machinery mingling with the unease of soldiers who had just witnessed something beyond comprehension. Kale stood at the center of the command room, the small device still glowing faintly in his hands. His chest rose and fell steadily, but the intensity in his eyes was electric, as though the stars themselves had lent him their energy. The council muttered among themselves, disbelief in every word. "A human," they whispered. "A simple human has stopped the Korath?" Leora's gaze never left him. She had watched countless battles, studied endless strategies, and commanded soldiers in wars that spanned planets. Yet nothing compared to this moment. Kyle, fragile and human, was holding the balance of the galaxy in his hands, and he did it with courage that dwarfed the mightiest of the Elysians. Suddenly, the remaining Korath ships regrouped, their leader emerging as a dark silhouette against the void. His voice boomed across space, sharp and commanding. "You cannot stop me, Elysians. Your shields, your fleets, your allies, none of it will save you." Kyle stepped forward, unafraid. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried an authority that made even the council fall silent. "You don't understand," he said. "This isn't about strength or fear or domination. It's about heart, about courage, about choosing to stand when everything says you should fall." The device in his hands began to hum louder, brighter. Energy crackled along the metal floor, weaving through the room like living lightning. Leora's pulse raced as she saw power unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The device, combined with Kale's sheer will, emitted waves of energy that stretched far beyond the flagship, touching ships, shields, and the void itself. The Korath leader's fleet faltered, engines sputtering as if reality itself resisted them. One by one, ships disintegrated, torn apart by the pure force Kale commanded, not through hatred, but through determination and the unyielding drive to protect those he cared for. Leora's eyes filled with tears. She could hardly believe it. Her heart swelled with pride, fear, and awe all at once. The human she had chosen, the one everyone else dismissed as weak and fragile, was reshaping the galaxy with nothing but his courage and spirit. The Elysians watched in stunned silence. Soldiers who had laughed, who had doubted, who had mocked Kale's presence, now knelt or bowed, unable to look away. The energy surrounding him was both terrifying and beautiful, a dazzling display of power tempered by purpose. Kale turned to Leora, exhaustion evident but unbroken. His voice was soft, almost intimate amid the chaos. "I can't do this alone," he said. "But with you, with us, we can face anything." Leora stepped forward, taking his hand firmly in hers. She felt warmth, strength, and love all at once. "I'm with you," she said, her voice steady. "Always." At that moment, the final wave of Korath ships broke, retreating into the darkness, defeated and awed. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the gentle hum of the flagship's restored systems. The Elysians turned to their princess, their eyes filled with astonishment and reverence. They had seen countless heroes, countless victories, but never a human who could command the cosmos itself with courage and heart. Kale let the device dim, stepping back. His body shook from exhaustion, but his gaze remained steady. Leora could see it clearly. How the strength of a human spirit that could never be measured by size, technology, or birthright. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. Now there was no doubt. The alien queen, the ruler of the Elysians, approached slowly, her steps hesitant, her eyes wide with awe fixed on the human before her. I have seen warriors, conquerors, gods, but nothing like this, she said, her voice trembling. A human, wielding power beyond comprehension. Leora squeezed Kale's hand, feeling the energy settle into calm warmth. He is mine, she said softly, proud and unashamed. And I chose him not for strength, not for fame, but for his heart. His courage, his humanity. Kyle smiled faintly, exhaustion softening his features. And I chose you, he whispered, because you see me, as I truly am. The stars outside shone brightly, silent witnesses to a truth the galaxy could no longer deny. Sometimes, the smallest, most fragile beings carried a light that could change everything. And Kyle, the human she chose, had just proven it. The battlefield was silent now, the remnants of the Korath fleet drifting like shattered dreams across the void. Elysians gathered around the flagship's observation deck, their eyes wide, their mouths silent. None of them could speak. They had witnessed something impossible. A human, small and fragile by their standards, who had turned the tide of war with courage and heart alone. Leora stood at the forefront, her hand still intertwined with Kyle's. She could feel the warmth of his skin, the steady rhythm of his pulse, and it grounded her. She had spent her life surrounded by beings of incredible strength and intellect, but none had ever inspired her in this way. Kale's bravery was not loud or boastful. It was quiet, relentless, and pure. And in that moment, she understood why she had chosen him. The alien queen approached slowly, her regal robes flowing behind her like liquid silver. She had watched the battle from afar, unseen, and now she looked upon Kale with something she had never felt before. Awe. Her eyes, ancient and wise, reflected the glow of the fading energy from his device. I have seen conquerors, she said softly, her voice trembling. I have seen warriors who commanded fleets, who destroyed worlds with a thought. But I have never seen a being like this, a human, wielding power beyond comprehension, not through hate or ambition, but through courage, heart, and the desire to protect. Kyle lowered his gaze respectfully, unassuming, yet his presence was commanding. Leora's heart swelled with pride. She squeezed his hand and whispered, You've changed everything, Kale. Not just the battle, but them. Everyone will remember you. The alien queen looked at Leora, then back at Kale, her eyes softening. You chose well, princess. This human is extraordinary. Not because of strength or skill, but because of who he is inside. That is the greatest power any being can have. Around them, the Elysians murmured among themselves. Soldiers and council members who had once doubted Kale now bowed or knelt, their eyes wide with respect. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, assuming their fragility meant weakness, but now they understood. Humanity carried a fire that could not be measured by size, technology, or status. It was courage, determination, and an unyielding heart that could overcome the impossible. Leora felt a warmth she had never known. For years she had been trained to lead, to fight, to obey rules of logic and power. Yet here, standing beside Kale, she realized there was something the Elysians could never teach. Love, trust, and courage, born from a human soul. He had not sought glory. He had not sought recognition. He had only acted because it was right, because it was necessary, because he cared. Kale looked out at the drifting remnants of the Korath fleet. I didn't do this alone, he said quietly. The Elysians, you all fought. But I tried because I had to. I couldn't stand by while people were in danger, and I couldn't stand by without you, Leora. Tears welled in her violet eyes. I knew you were special, she whispered. But I never imagined this. You're more than I ever dreamed a human could be. Kale turned to her, smiling softly. And you're more than I ever dreamed anyone could see me as I am. You believed in me, when no one else did. The alien queen stepped closer, her voice filled with reverence. Let the galaxy know this truth. Humans are not to be underestimated. They carry courage that rivals the strongest fleets, a heart that outshines the oldest stars. And this one, this human chosen by our princess, has shown us all what that truly means. Around them, Elysians nodded, whispers of awe spreading like wildfire. Leora felt pride, love, and hope swelling inside her chest. Kale had changed more than a battle. He had changed perceptions, hearts, and the very idea of what humanity could be. In that quiet, shining moment, the stars seemed to pause, as if the galaxy itself recognized what had just happened. Kyle, the human she chose, had unleashed a power beyond imagination, and the alien queen and all who watched could only stare in awe. Leora held his hand tighter. "You've given them hope," she whispered. "And you've given me everything." Kale smiled faintly, his eyes soft with exhaustion and love. "We've done this together," he said, and in that moment the universe seemed to agree. The galaxy was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into the vast emptiness of space. The Korath threat had been defeated, their remnants scattered and broken, a reminder that even the mightiest could fall before courage and heart. But the true victory was not in the ships destroyed or the shields saved. It was in what Kale had shown the universe, that humans, small and fragile in appearance, could rise above the impossible. Leora stood beside him on the observation deck, their hands intertwined. Stars stretched endlessly before them, glittering like diamonds across the dark canvas of space. She had spent her life seeing galaxies as strategic territories, people as resources, and battles as calculations. Yet now, with Kale beside her, she saw something new: hope, trust, and a fire that could ignite even the coldest darkness. The Elysians gathered quietly, their expressions a mix of respect and disbelief. Soldiers who had doubted him now bowed their heads. Council members who had scoffed whispered words of admiration. Even the alien queen, regal and wise beyond measure, looked upon Kale with awe. "I have seen warriors, conquerors, and legends," she said softly, her voice carrying across the deck. "But never one like this human, one who wields courage as his weapon and love as his shield." Kyle looked down, humbled. He had not sought recognition. He had acted because it was right, because people needed him, because Leora needed him. Yet the galaxy could no longer ignore what he had accomplished. Humans were underestimated, overlooked, dismissed, and now they were remembered. Leora squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth and steady strength of his presence. "You've changed everything," she whispered. "Not just the battle, not just the fleet, but the way the galaxy sees us." Kale smiled faintly. "We changed everything," he said. Together, time passed and stories of Kale's courage spread across the stars. Humans, once underestimated, were now seen as beings of hope, courage, and unbreakable will. Worlds that had ignored Earth began to reach out, not because of fear, but because they understood that humanity carried a fire that no fleet, no empire, could ever extinguish. Leora often found herself walking the deck with Kale, looking at the stars they had once feared. She had never imagined that a human could inspire such awe, such hope. And yet here he was beside her, quiet and humble, and yet larger than any legend she had known. One evening, as the twin suns of a distant system set in fiery brilliance, Kale turned to her. "Do you ever think," he asked softly, "that maybe humans are small, but maybe that's our strength? That we fight with heart and hope and stubborn courage?" Leora smiled, tears shining in her violet eyes. "I've seen it," she said. "I've seen what you are, and I've seen what humanity can do because of you. You are more than strong, Kale. You are unforgettable." He took her hand, holding it close. "And you are unforgettable to me," he whispered. "Not because of what you command or what you are, but because you see me, truly see me." The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter that night, as if echoing the truth of their words. In the silence of space, humanity's fire blazed like a beacon, proof that courage, love, and heart could shape destinies and turn the tide of entire galaxies. The alien queen later spoke to the council and soldiers, her words carrying across worlds. "Let all beings remember this, human, Kale of Earth. Let them remember that strength is not only in fleets, nor courage only in warriors. Sometimes the smallest spark carries the brightest light. Humanity has shown us that today, and Kale has shown us what it truly means to rise. Leora rested her head against Kale's shoulder, feeling warmth, pride, and love intertwine. "You've given them hope," she said softly. "And you've given me everything," Kale smiled, looking out at the endless stars. "And the journey is just beginning," he replied. Together they stood, hands clasped, hearts united, ready to face whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. In the vastness of space, one truth had become clear. Humans were not just survivors. They were creators, dreamers, fighters, and heroes. And Kale, the human she chose, had lit the first spark that would never fade. The galaxy would remember him. They would remember humanity. And hope would shine brighter than any star.